enough of listening to the bullshit, lies, and distortions and incompetence of the fascist thugs who run the U.S. government now. I have just about reached that point myself. But I'm going to share with you a little bit later this evening the second article written by Jeffrey Goldberg, and he wrote the second one because, this is just my words, I assume he was just sick and tired to listen to the bullshit coming from these lying bastards who sat before the Senate Intelligence Committee today. And then after his second article about the Signal chat by these filth, the House hearing today, the House Intelligence Committee, where the same bullshit went on once again. And once again, very few members of the Christian Bastard Party showed up to ask questions. Goldberg published what he published yesterday at the Atlantic Magazine website. The shit really hit the fan for most true Americans. For these fascist bastards, the only thing that was concerning to them was that their stupid breach of national security and putting our military people at risk of losing their lives. The only thing that concerned them was they were found out. And, you know, I mentioned yesterday during the testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee that I had never seen anyone like Tulsi Gabbard, except going back to Iran-Contra or back to Watergate, who was so intent on letting the world know, I don't recollect that. I have no recollection of that. I don't remember that. I have no recollection. But there's something else about this strange person, Tulsi Gabbard. I've noticed for a long time that she has dead eyes. There is no expression on this person's face, ever, that has been seen, as far as I know, when a camera was nearby. She has the expression of a dead person, along with her dead eyes. And this thing that Trump appointees do when they are questioned about the shit that they're doing, they overtalk the members of Congress. The member of Congress will ask a question. Gabbard or Waltz or what's his name? Ratcliffe. They start to answer, and then they start to drift into bullshit misrepresentation of what the question was. And the member of Congress will say, okay, that's enough. I have another question. And these little fuckers keep going. They just keep talking like little automatons. And they have to include in every single thing they say. Have you noticed this? They have to throw in at least one or two adjectives that glorify the toilet rat because of the president's remarkable leadership, because President Trump is an excellent, that kind of shit. The Tulsi Gabbard, to me, it looks like somebody who, I'm serious, I don't mean this as a gratuitous slam. She looks like somebody who died and has been reanimated, but there's no light in her eyes. Nothing there. No expression. Other than this little wrinkled brow thing that is just, I don't know. She scares the shit out of me. She really does. The Director of National Intelligence, a member of the Walking Dead. Good God. All right, let me quote from what Jeffrey Goldberg published at the Atlantic website today. He writes, so about that Signal chat. On Monday, shortly after we published a story about a massive Trump administration security breach, a reporter asked the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, why he had shared plans about a forthcoming attack on Yemen on the Signal messaging app. He answered, quote, nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that, end quote. At a Senate hearing yesterday, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and the Director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, were both asked about the Signal chat, to which Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic was inadvertently invited by National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. Gabbard told members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, quote, "There was no classified material that was shared on that signal group," end quote. Ratcliffe said much the same, quote, "My communications, to be clear, in the signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information," end quote. President Donald Trump, asked yesterday afternoon about the same matter, said, quote, "It wasn't classified information," end quote. These statements presented us with a dilemma. In the Atlantic's initial story about the Signal chat, the Houthi PC small group, as it was named by Waltz, we withheld specific information related to weapons and to the timing of attacks that we found in certain texts. As a general rule, we do not publish information about military operations if that information could possibly jeopardize the lives of U.S. personnel. That is why we chose to characterize the nature of the information being shared, not specific details about the attacks. The statements by Hegseth, Gabbard, Ratcliffe, and Trump, combined with the assertions made by numerous administration officials that we are lying about the content of the signal texts, have led us to believe that people should see the texts in order to reach their own conclusions. There's a clear public interest in disclosing the sort of information that Trump advisors included in non-secure communications channels, especially because senior administration officials are attempting to downplay the significance of the messages that were shared. Experts have repeatedly told us that use of a signal chat for such sensitive discussions poses a threat to national security. As a case in point, Goldberg received information on the attacks 2 hours before the scheduled start of the bombing of Houthi positions. If this information, particularly the exact times American aircraft were taking off for Yemen, if this information had fallen into the wrong hands in that crucial 2-hour period, American pilots and other American personnel could have been exposed to even greater danger than they ordinarily would face. The Trump administration is arguing that the military information contained in these texts were not classified, as they typically would be, although the president has not explained how he reached that conclusion. Yesterday, we asked officials across the Trump administration if they objected to us publishing the full texts. In emails to the CIA, the Office of the DNI, the National Security Council, the Department of Defense, and the White House, we wrote, in part, quote, "In light of statements today from multiple administration officials, including before the Senate Intelligence Committee, that the information in the signal chain about the Houthi strikes was not classified and that it does not contain war plans, the Atlantic is considering publishing the entirety of the signal chain." End quote. We sent out our first request for comment and feedback to national security officials shortly after noon, and followed up in the evening after most failed to answer. Late yesterday, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt emailed a response, which read, quote, "As we have repeatedly stated, there was no classified information transmitted in the group chat. However, as the CIA director and the National Security Advisor have both expressed today, that does not mean we encourage the release of the conversation. This was intended to be an internal and private deliberation amongst high-level senior staff, and sensitive information was discussed. So, for these reasons," that's how she wrote it, "for these reasons, we object to the release," end quote. Goldberg adds in parentheses, "The Leavitt statement did not address which elements of the text the White House considered sensitive or how, more than a week after the initial airstrike, their publication could have bearing on national security." A CIA spokesperson asked us to withhold the name of John Ratcliffe's chief of staff, which Ratcliffe had shared in the Signal chat. Because CIA intelligence officers are traditionally not publicly identified. Ratcliffe had testified earlier yesterday that the officer is not undercover and said it was, quote, completely appropriate, end quote, to share his name in the Signal conversation. We will continue to withhold the name of that officer. Otherwise, the messages are unredacted. As we wrote on Monday, most of the conversation in the Houthi PC small group concerned the timing and rationale of attacks on the Houthis and contained remarks by Trump administration officials about the alleged shortcomings of America's European allies. But on the day of the attack, Saturday, March 15, the discussion veered into the operational. End quote. And then what Goldberg has done is publish specific parts of the chat group conversation that, in my reading, and, what do I know? Well, I know a lot, goddammit. In my reading, it's easy for me to see that this is information that if it did not qualify as being classified, it goddamn sure should have been. But the truth is, from all I've heard since this horrible incident first began, every single directive from military guidebooks, from national security protocols, anything pertaining to war plans, operational plans, weaponry to be used, targets to be designated, people to be involved, transmissions of conversations regarding the strikes, all of it is absolutely classified information. Now, all of this, of course, is a bit difficult for me to get into because I am so anti this kind of violence, this kind of war, which is not my saying I dismiss the terror attacks by the Houthis on international shipping or on U.S. presence in the Middle East. Everything has gotten so fucking complicated and multi-layered of violence upon violence upon violence by regimes and non-state actors who don't give a goddamn about human life. Whether it is so-called terror groups or governments, they just don't give a shit. So people die, children are blown to pieces, grandparents are reduced to blood and bone. And this shit just goes on and fucking on and on. So I'm not building a defense here for war plans or for Houthi terror attacks or for Netanyahu or for Hamas. Everybody has their argument. Everybody has their point of view. And some arguments and some points of view are much more valid and much more reality-based than others. So that's not what my getting into this rat's nest that these people produced. That's not my objective. My objective has been just to reveal what, in this instance, what Jeffrey Goldberg was made privy to, and also then to overlay that with my screaming, hysterical, foul-mouthed attack on all of this shit, but especially on this corrupt goddamn administration of this toilet rat, this fucking bum, Donald Trump, and these Nazi, inexperienced little gnomes who work for him. I'm sure you understood that without my having to say it. But watching these people yesterday and this morning, yesterday before the Senate Intelligence Committee, today before the House Intelligence Committee, watching the way they lie, just sit there and fucking lie, knowing that the toilet rat will cover for them. The toilet rat will give them whatever protection they need. And if anybody challenges what they say, well, the toilet rat will do anything he can to destroy the challenger. Not question the information, not investigate what's going on. Oh, fuck no. What the toilet rat does is try to destroy the people who bring up the truth. And if he's not trying to destroy them, he's whimpering and whining like some little goddamn 3-year-old that just had their candy taken from them. Oh, you're being so mean to me. These people were so mean to me. And then you have this silly little bitch, this Carolyn Levitt, this little spokesperson who is such a fucking liar with her little cross around her neck, celebrating the torture device used to murder her Messiah. Oh, yes, indeed. Well, she stands up there and lies through her teeth. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.